Welcome back. 13 rands and 55 cents. Now, that's how much a litre of petrol costs following the hike at midnight last night. According to experts, the latest increase could mean that consumers may have to brace themselves for a rise in inflation, unless, of course, the rand stops weakening. Let's chat now to economist Chris Hart to find out what impact the latest petrol price will have. Chris, I'm afraid you're always the bearer of bad news, but I'm going to ask you, another fuel price increase. Yeah. This is among the hikes that could particularly hit the consumer quite hard, isn't it?
No, exactly, because it's a cumulative effect. To say if the last one hit, right, even though this is a smaller increase, this can hit harder because you haven't been compensated yet for, on a salary basis, etc. For the last hike, you've been squeezed there, and now you're getting another squeeze, and that makes it, which straw is the one that breaks the camel's back, as it were. And that's the difficulties households face, is that this is a cost that you can't really avoid too much.
You're right. It's not only the food, it's the fuel, for motorists and also those who use illuminating paraffin to cook,
yes,
etc. So that's the effect on the individual.
Yes.
But can we expect a ripple effect on the economy as a whole?
Because what happens is that the prices go up, right, and so the costs go up, so it squeezes companies, it squeezes the individuals as that increases the cost. So what happens is the standard of living comes down, and the hurdle to do business is also raised a bit, and that makes it increasingly difficult. So it contributes to the slowdown in the economy, because money is being siphoned to pay for fuel.
And Chris, who benefits from the price of petrol? I understand the profit margin is quite low for the retail. I mean, yes, the petrol, the filling station, they have to rely often on the convenience stores and the property, yes, which makes more money sometimes than actually selling the petrol. Who benefits at the end of the day?
Well, the thing is, the refiners have a fixed margin, the retailers have a fixed margin, so where the fuel price goes up and down, that's the margin that they've got. So who benefits? Effectively, who we buy our crude oil from. So it's Saudi Arabia and Angola and Nigeria. All your oil producers benefit from this.
Is it feasible for us to look to government for a solution? Several words have been thrown around: more government control, maybe a cap on the petrol price, deregulation, subsidizing the cost. I mean, you know these things better than I do, but something needs to cushion the effect.
Well, effectively, our fuel price is highly regulated. In other words, it's set by government, okay? And so one would say, do you want more of that? Certainly, probably not. But I think at the end of the day, the fuel pricing is reasonably transparent, etc. What we need to do is look at the rand. And we need to then start making the connection that the strikes which have affected the rand, okay, is why we're paying high the lack of productivity. For instance, the fact that we import more than we export, etc. We need to look at those sort of things. So we need to get our growth rate up. We need to be looking at our competitiveness so that we can export more, because that's a harsh sort of world, so that we can actually at least have a stable currency and not have that contributing to higher fuel prices.
How do we fare when it comes to our global counterparts? I mean, what's the norm in other countries in the price of petrol?
Well, we're not particularly expensive. Europe is exceptionally expensive because they've got enormously high taxes on the fuel. We've got quite substantial taxes on the fuel, about 40% or so. Which is a significant burden, but there's other countries in the Middle East, etc., that have far lower things. One thing that won't work is a subsidy, because those are never sustainable. In countries that do have them end up having to take them away ultimately. So one's got to be careful, and it creates a very artificial way of doing it. In other words, somebody else who's not using fuel is effectively paying for people who are using fuel, and that's the problem with the one of the problems with the subsidy. So ultimately, we need to look at how can we improve our efficiency. In other words, use more fuel-efficient cars, etc. Public transport, we need to improve that. That will help to alleviate, affordable, accessible, safe public transport. All of those criteria, if one can have them, and have it integrated. So those are important. And then, of course, our robots working, our cars serviced, so that we're not, consuming more fuel than then we actually have to driving more carefully. It's amazing the difference that makes, right, to actually how far you can go, right, and so we need to just calm down in the traffic. That'll also save it'll not only save lives, it'll also save fuel.
So the onus is on us to try and mitigate the effects.
There is a lot that we can do. All right, travelling at 100 instead of 120 makes an enormous difference. For example, so if you're not in a hurry, leave early and travel calmly. That makes a difference. It really does. Try to avoid the peak hour because that consumes enormous amount of fuel. Try and travel outside those times.
We'll have to leave it there for now. I mean, I'm sure you'd agree with me, the cost of living is just way too high.
Yeah.
So whatever we can do, we must do. I think also disheartening is the cost of food, etc., the knock-on effects. But we'll have to leave it there for now. I'm sure we'll have you in sooner or later when we see another increase. That's the trouble of having this kind of interview. Thank you so much again for your time. Economist Chris Hart. And with that, let's take a look at our top stories.
News that moves. eNCA.com.